is up, guys? This is Alex from First Figures.
Hey there everyone, this is Chuckles.
Who do we have here? Spyro Reignited Spyro! Hey, Chucks, it's been not too long since we've been, this has been a pretty straightforward piece. We've had a bit of experience in the Spyro franchise, so, we knew what we were going to be doing from the beginning. Yeah. So it's not been too long in development, so I'm happy to say it was, as I said, it's quite a smooth one. But we're going to get into all of that, right, Chucks? Because this is all about the making of documentary series where we talk a little bit about some of the design choices, some of the design difficulties you would have had, and really sort of explain a little bit more about what that's all about, Chucks. So tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, as you said, this is a continuation of our Spyro franchise.
Right.
If you're a big fan of ours, you've been following us for a while, you know that this is based off the Spyro Reignited version.
Absolutely.
Okay, so again, this is the launch for Spyro Reignited Spyro. And so if you first time watching this video, please make sure to join our First Figures Official Collectors Club on Facebook. In there, every time we do a launch, we will make a post asking you guys for questions with regards to this particular product. And so here we are. So please enjoy.
So we got some questions then, do we?
Yeah, we
have. Before you get on with that, Chucks, let's give this bad boy, or the goodest boy, the goodest purple boy, a spin as we're chatting away.
All right. Okay, so I have, there's a back-to-back question here, right?
Okay.
So one from Stefan and another one from Brendan Rostello. Mm-hmm. So first one, Stefan McNally. Overall, how pleased are you with the pose? And Brendan Rostello, what new challenges arose based on the Reignited design that you did not have to worry about for the original Resin?
Okay, these questions are actually really great for us to really talk a little bit more about the pose itself and talk about some of the engineering aspects of that and how it compares to the original Spyro as well, to really talk about that.
When you referring to the original, you mean the classic Spyro? Okay?
That's correct, right? So we made our original Spyro product was an original series Spyro. So that's actually before the Reignited trilogy was even a thing. It wasn't even announced. It was something that we took from the original Spyro game way back when, and based it off of the first cover. And let's get Tingle, please do an overlay so people know what we're talking about for that particular piece. And we'll do a comparison shot of that a little later on. But what's quite interesting is, Stefan says, how pleased are you with the pose? Well, look, one of the things that we really had to consider was the fact it's a challenge that we have with whenever we do animals, dragons, anything that's not humanoid. When you see something like that from the front on, directly front on, what you're going to see is almost like the silhouette from the front, which is usually it's the front 2 feet and the head. If it's, let's say, in a wolf, right, something like that, you're going to see the front 2 feet and the head directly straight on. And you really don't see what you see from the side when you look at animals, which is all 4 feet, assuming it's it's got 4 legs. All 4 feet, the length of the body, the tail, all that good stuff. You really don't see that directly from the front. And I wouldn't say it's a problem, but it's certainly something that when we did the original OG Resin of the Spyro from way back when, it was based specifically on a cover. And when it's based on a cover, we're very loyal to the fact that we were going for it to be a representation of the front cover of the original Spyro game. So we knew that we had to make our original Spyro exactly like the front cover. And again, please do some overlays here of how we took the original cover of Spyro, the original Spyro game, and did our statue. And really that's what was our goal, and that was what we were going for that particular piece. Now, with this one, Chucks, we did not have that restriction whatsoever. And it meant that we could really be a little bit more creative, or not, have that creative freedom to really explore some designs and some other things that we would want to do when we're not having to have a forced angle. So if we actually just stop it right here, it's a good timing. This is the quote-unquote front or money shot of this particular piece, that it was designed that most people will display their Spyro Reignited Resin in this angle. So what is it that you notice from this, Chucks, when it's angled like this, that is kind of different from what I talked a little bit earlier about from the front. What are the differences that you see from here?
From obviously when you said the original one is all pretty much on the ground, static. You know, you see the front. Most of the shot is from the front. On this one is more dynamic. You see the full body going across, as in like it's a side view.
Exactly. Right. So it's a key point is that it's both the side and a front view for the head. The head is angled in such a way that it's not perfectly front, but the eyes themselves they're not looking straight, which sometimes can be a little bit dead-eyed, sort of almost neutral looking like that. We wanted to give a bit of life to them by, and this is both Sparks and Spyro here, slightly turning the eyes of Spyro. So yes, this is a perfectly front-on shot of the head, like that, right? That is a perfectly front-on shot of the head, but the eyes themselves are off to the left from this angle, right? Right on the screen, it's off to the left himself. So the actual money shot with him actually looking directly into the camera is Komsa, like this. Okay, so that was because we wanted to inject a bit of life into the character himself. Remember when we were designing this, we really thought about how is it that we would have the money shot where he's looking into the camera, but also, Chocks, that we don't have to fall into the same trap, or should I actually say, the same requirements that we had of the original Spyro Resin, which was, it was really about focusing on the way it looked from the front cover, and we didn't have any kind of freedom to deviate from that goal. Whereas, as I said, we didn't have that restriction here. It allowed for us to, show an animal, dragon, the way that you kind of associate the four-legged characters, where they have the side view. You can really kind of, it's mainly like, for example, if you took a silhouette and you blacked it out and you did it from the front on of an animal, you would almost think it had just two legs. Kind of be quite weird. Look, two legs, a chest and a head. It looked very, very strange when you look directly from the front.
It's flat.
Exactly. Now, if you took it from the side, you're most likely to recognize the shape of a dog, a wolf, a dragon from the side. Because, oh look, it's got 4 feet, boom, 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 and the way it's shaped, it's got a tail. All that sort of stuff you can really see from the silhouette from the side. So we wanted to really have that silhouette when it came to this piece. If you recall, when we were going through this design, we went through a lot of the choices of what we could do with regards to the pose. Actually, Chocks, I want to sort of back up a bit and talk a little bit about the as we'll continue talking about this. So I want to back up a bit because you remember, Chocks, we were absolutely honored to be working with Activision right at the time that the actual game was launched for the original Spyro Reignited trilogy, which means that we were working on this piece quite a bit earlier, Chocks. We were working on it and we got assets for it way before it was announced, right? And we were very privileged to do that. And one of the things we also got, we got sort of footage of beta or alpha footage of what it would look like, etc., etc. And another thing, Chocks, is we actually got the animation files. Do you remember that, Chocks? Yeah. So, how does he look when he's attacking? How does he look when he's breathing fire? How does it look when he's running
or flying? Or ramming into objects and all that stuff. Yeah.
And the key one you just said there is gliding or flying. That kind of use of the wings and all that sort of stuff. It really allowed for us to really imagine the possibility of a statue. Of course, at the very beginning, we were working on the PVC, right? So we went. But then when we came to the actual idea of actually doing a flying version, when it came to the idea of looking at a resin piece, when we re-examined all of the poses, and we went through each one again and again and again, we kept coming back. We kept coming back to the gliding, the flying, being a little bit more out there. And again, we talked about how do we create the silhouette for it to be more about it being on the side, so it's no longer that kind of front-on shot of an animal, but more about being able to see it from the side. So we kept coming back to the flying thing because it allowed for us to think about, hey, if you're flying and you're turning in an angle, imagine you're in a swimming pool, right, and you push off and you put 2 hands forward like the Superman pose. So you do that, you actually go completely straight. Now if you put 1 hand forward, this way for example, and you push off, you'll actually start turning to the left. And likewise, if you do this, you start turning to the right. So when you actually think about that concept, where whatever's going out front is going to be the way that the sort of wind resistance, or in the case of the swimming, of course, of the water resistance, it kind of pushes you naturally in the turn that you're going. So with Spyro, it's almost like he's leaning his body. Can you see that, Chocks? How the way that we're demonstrating that he's in a turn. What is it about the sculpt that really highlights that it's turning in a sculpt? The sculpt is turning in the flow of the pose. What do you notice from that, Chocks? How are we showing that?
Well, everything is kind of twisted to one side. So
That's
for
right.
example, the obvious one right now is obviously the head, and you can see the neck, the way it turns into the angle, that the body follows through, and the way the legs and the arms are like twisted at a certain angle as well.
Exactly. It's about that angle. It's the tilt of the body, and I mean you can't really see it from the top, but it's almost like if you look from the top, it's like a banana shape. Do you say, Chocks? Right? This part is at the front. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly right. And the twist in the head and the kind of flexing of the body, it's kind of curled, side curling, right? So that he's turning directly towards the left. The way that he's turning is he's gliding towards the left. Now, that allowed for us to do the two key things, which was the money shot, which is with the eyes looking into you. So again, back to the money shot is here, Chocks, right? But also to be able to see from the side the silhouette of a dragon having four legs, etc., etc. And that is what we really kept coming back to when it came to just differentiating it from the original Resin, where you're not having the straight on shot. And it was really important to us to be able to be a little bit more ambitious with the pose, to be able to see something that you don't often see. So, I mean, if you have a look at that, Chocks, you were absolutely right by saying the twisting of the body, the way the body is tilting towards the left. I mean, look at that. It's completely angled in that way to do a sharp.
It's much more obvious this way, the way it's kind of swinging outwards, gliding. You can see even with the angle as well. From here, it looks like it's just turning around, like twisting around, but from here, it looks like it's going upwards.
And one of the things, of course, is we need to make sure that a statue looks great from all angles. So that was a consideration as well, that even if you're not looking into the, this is a fantastic way to display him this way. I mean, this one really highlights the way it is.
Yeah, I mean, that like we say with the two-legged, four-legged thing, this is kind of like two-legged here.
Exactly right. So you don't see any of the tail. If we were gonna just design it like this, forget about the rest of the back. You might as well just get rid of the tail, get rid of the rest of it, because no one can see it. And that is why we wanted to make sure that it made sense that people can appreciate it from all angles. And the shot that we, as I say, we deem the money shot, you can still see a hell of a lot of the statue itself. And that was really what we wanted to make sure that we captured in this pose. One other way for it to be tested, there's two other ways, Chocks, that we have that. We said about the body itself and the way it's curling around, but also the way that you have the tilting of the wings. The tilt of the head is one thing, but also the wings itself. If you look from over here, Chocks, you see one up, one down, right? This one is up and this one is down, and it's kind of like if you ever see a bird swooping around, it kind of does this. Or even an aeroplane, Chocks, if you think about that, an aeroplane is going to start turning or banking, they do that, and that starts making him do that. Right? And that's what we sort of looked at and considered when we had the gliding. One last obvious one as well, Chocks. When we thought about how we're going to do any kind of flying pose, we're thinking, well, how are we going to actually have it suspended in the air? So we had a two-part thing with these trails that come out along over here, right? It's a two-part thing. The first one is the trail itself. They connect to the body in a way that it's like a boomerang as well, right? Yeah. It's that, again, we come back to the whole idea of how do we give the feeling of rotating very quickly, doing a sharp bank. How do we have him turning around like this, right? Like almost like that, right? So this served two purposes. The first one is that it allowed for us to give the dynamic feeling that he's turning. Yeah. And the second one is, of course, it helped for us to get this amazing effect, Chocks, that he literally is in the air and suspended in the air like that. Now that is Absolutely. And it really is, I think, it was great that we could use that
The kind of swoosh effect.
to have a two-part purpose. Suspend him in the air, and sparks, of course, and then, of course, also consider the fact that he is turning and giving that motion of it as well. So, that really sort of goes a little bit more into the actual pose. And
The same goes with sparks as well. They're all twisted like a boomerang shape for sparks as well, and the way the wings are angled as well.
So again, you can see his head and you can see the end of his thorax or abdomen, I guess it would be.
Yeah.
You can see the tip of his tail from the front, which again was the same sort of principle that we were looking at when you looked at Spyro himself, and of course the tail and the way that was done like that. Now we worked really closely with Lusai on this project, and he did a fantastic job, Chocks, to really give that feeling of the turning itself. And when you consider the fact that they are turning, one more thing, Chocks, and that is, before we go into it, let's recap. Body turn, head turn, angling the angle of like this, the wings themselves, tilting it like this, and the swoosh effect having that. Well, if you take the logical feeling that they are near the water, we have here the base, and it's near the water itself, what you can see is the swoosh effect of this water is following the curve of the inspiration of the water effect is actually that the power of his glide is curving and carving up, the kind of affecting the water in a way that's kind of, do you know what I mean? Like it's catching,
pushing them away.
Because it's right, almost like you could almost think of it like a rowboat or something, not a rowboat, like a speedboat or something. The way it kind of opens it up to give it a bit of a turn, so it's not straight, but actually it's kind of semi following the motion of the turn of the characters itself. So you can probably sort of see a little bit more where this is the front and the back of the curve is kind of over here, so it kind of curls around, following the same principle of the swoosh at the top and the whole body and all that sort of stuff like that. So those are the ways that we could really give that feeling, give that thought to the motion of it turning. So when it comes back to Brendan's question, what challenges arose based on the Reignited design that you didn't have to worry about the original Resin? Okay, well that's pretty straightforward. So the first one is, we knew that we had to worry about how can we show more of the statue itself than just the front. We've gone into that in depth. The second, of course, difficulty when you compare to the OG, the fact is we've been far more ambitious with the pose. It comes at a consideration, of course, is that we have to make sure that the engineering of this is done in a way that we have to, make sure it's going to be okay for years to come. And that's, of course, more challenging compared to the original Resin, because they had 4 feet on the ground, etc., etc. It was all pretty straightforward. So we didn't have to worry too much about that. But this one, obviously, it's a consideration, so we had to make sure that that was okay. Okay.
All right, next question from Bart Clip and Alessio Gucci. So, question from Bart: how do you decide how detailed you want to have a statue? When is it detailed enough? And Alessio Gucci is it hard to paint a statue with an open mouth?
Okay. All right, so I think this is a great dual question that we can really talk about some of the details of this piece. So Bart Clip says, how do you decide how detailed you want to have a statue? Now, for something like that, Chokes, you have to really consider what kind of statue is this piece. Now, is it an anime statue? Is it something more realistic, like armors? Is it something that is a bit more cartoony? Is it something that is more realistic? What is it that you're trying to go for? Once you know what you're aiming for, you can really start considering how much detail is enough and which is appropriate for this piece. And it was quite interesting, Chokes. When we actually did this piece, we actually did a lot more detail on this originally, which was having the same kind of scales that we had in the original Resin, of the original OG resin, right, of Spyro, if you look at that, there's a lot more skin textures and details on that. We actually did that for this piece, but we were told to actually dial it back because the actual details of this piece in the actual Reignited version is a lot more smooth skinned, and therefore we removed all of that feeling directly on the actual sculpt itself. But because we didn't physically put it on the actual sculpt, as in we dialed it back. What can you see from the actual skin itself? I mean, we're going to go top to bottom in a minute, but what is it particularly that you see about the skin itself? It's not just a solid purple, is it, Chocks?
No, I mean, first of all, the sculpt wise is much simplified than, say, the original Spyro, as you would expect from the Reignited game. If you picked up one of our PVC versions of the Spyro Reignited one, you can understand that they share the same type of scale, as in like the much more simplified lumps on the back. It's much more obvious to see the scales.
Right.
Yeah, and like it might look really simple here with you might think it's just one shade of purple, but it's not. There's like you might have one single base, a purple base, but on top of that you can see like tiny little specks of like sprayed out purple that's spread across throughout the entire body. And then these individual scales, it's more kind of protruding, right? Sticking out. They all have different levels of height when it comes to these scales. And I mean, these are more of a darker shade of purple, but the actual entire body is all, you can see like tiny little specks of darker purple dots.
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. And of course, that's just on the flat areas of the skin. And of course, each one, in the actual sculpt itself, Chocks, these are all raised, all of these kind of sort of circle, effects along here. They're all raised, and as you said, with the spine as well. And it really means that it has a 3D depth to it.
Yeah. And adding the shading as well around, like, for example, the spine parts, the part where it attaches to the skin itself is much more darker, and it kind of goes into a lighter shade of purple towards the edge.
So it's certainly not all one color.
It's not one color. It's like, I remember, our PVC is pretty much one color, isn't it?
That's right.
The actual scales themselves, it's like a flat purple, then a darker purple, and then we just added some gloss on top of it, right? I understand.
Yeah, for the actual for these
for these painted ones, it has a lot more variations.
It's got more subtlety when it comes to the dots.
Yeah.
That's something that the other ones didn't have.
Right, that's right.
All right, Chocks. So again, back to Bart's question, how much detail do you want to have with a statue? Well, when do you know when to stop? But the answer really is, it depends what we're trying to do. And then actually for this one, we went over and we were asked to dial it back. But it doesn't mean, and that was just specifically for the purple area. There's tons of detail everywhere else though, isn't there, Chocks?
Yeah.
So do you want to go through the top to bottom while we're here?
Let's focus on the kind of bright yellow orangey parts. I mean, first of all, the horns.
Yeah.
It kind of has that kind of honeycomb bee color, right? Like that kind of beehive color. The yellows and yellows.
Fancy crunchy now.
Yeah. That kind of stuff. So I'm just trying to figure this, like compare this to the PVCs that we had, and this one has a lot more textures around it, and like this still has the kind of like scuff marks that's carried over from the PVC.
That's right.
As well. So these horns have been through some rough patches. You can see all the scars, and then each individual line has some depth as well. So along this horn, you can actually feel the bumps and the ridges that goes around it, all around the actual horn itself.
That's right.
Yeah, and then you have the textures. So it's not, I won't go overboard with the texture right here, but you can see that it has a little subtle texture. So the horn textures and the mohawk textures are different.
The mohawk's much more of a leathery kind of a feeling, which is the same kind of leather effect that's on the wings. So if you look at the actual oranges of the wings, so it's a really good example of using it goes throughout the entirety of this piece. So the horn is more like a bone and this is more like a leather. Yeah. Okay, so if you look at the ridges of the wings, along the spine of the wings, it's more of the horn styling, right? The horn kind of bumpy effect,
the bony effect.
Yeah, the bony effect. So and then the wings itself, the more orangey area, that's much more the leather mohawk kind of thing.
Yeah. You can see like all the kind of like lines, the crack lines.
That's right.
The webbing lines, or whatever you call it.
Yeah, leather kind of, yeah. And that's also, again, if you look at the going down the chest area, again,
that's more of the bony texture, right?
Exactly right.
That's right. So that goes all the way from the top of the neck here, all the way to the back of the tail.
That's right, yeah.
Or in sculpture, you can feel the actual kind of like overlaying of each kind of
section.
Section, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, right.
And then you have the tip of the tail, kind of like a cone effect, swirls around.
Accurately sculpted, because we were fortunate to be working with the original files as well, so we could, yeah. So let's have a little look at before we go into the other parts, let's just quickly talk about the mouth, because I think it was Letoguchi. Is it hard to paint a statue with an open mouth? I mean, definitely, hard is maybe not hard, but it's certainly more of a process. For example, the mouth itself, the teeth are separate pieces that we had to do the bottom and the top in order to separately cast them and then fit them in order to get that open mouth effect. And also there's no way to paint inside unless you remove the teeth. So you remove the teeth, you paint inside, you paint the tongue, and then you insert the teeth themselves, and then you have to add more effects such as the gloss in there. Can you see the differences in gloss for that? So all of that has to be considered when we're doing an open mouth piece.
To get that, because separate pieces to give it that kind of clean look.
That's right. So Chocks, what I want to say also is the eyes themselves. It's not just... Have a look at the actual eyes themselves. What do you see? It's not just one flat colour, is it, Chocks?
No, definitely not. This is looking just as nice as the PVC version as well. I mean, the different shades of eyes, gradients from like kind of a darker, starts off with a black outline, kind of a dark black, wash over like the same dark, deep purplish colour, and then it goes into kind of a
lighter kind of
magento kind of colour, that goes all the way down. Yeah, it's very nice.
And it's also got a little bit of gloss, so it's different from the purple of the skin, but it's a little bit more shiny. And we took that shine also to put it for the teeth as well, just to be a little bit more, close to what you would expect. A bit of shine on the teeth, the tongue, and the eyes in particular are ones that we wanted to sort of pay attention to. The nostrils, of course, Chocks, is that kind of trademark, almost like a comma, or two sides of a quotation mark, if you know what I mean, right? Those are added to the nose themselves, and it's as it would be expected for Spyro himself. So should we talk a little bit about Sparks now?
Yeah, so Sparks, very nice size compared to the PVC one. Yeah,
he's a big piece.
Definitely a big piece. So you can see a lot more detail here. You can see how chunky the wings are. I mean, from above, you can see these are 4 individual wings,
and it's got this kind of detailing to it, which we got that kind of right with the actual PVC itself, and you could see how it has that kind of buzzing effect.
And then with the lines, these are individually sculpted lines. It's kind of like imagine like a seashell. It has that kind of shell kind of feeling towards.
That's right.
The actual strands, each line that goes from the inner bit.
Those ridges. Now, one of the things, Chocks, is some people were a little bit, how do I say it? They were kind of a bit, wasn't quite sure why is it that Sparks had buzzing wings on the PVC.
Right.
So, Ting and Enoch, please put an overlay of the PVC version, the exclusive version, which has Sparks on it, because they're stationary.
Sure.
But here, there's going to be no question about it. It made sense that there was some buzzing in the wings for Sparks himself, because that's what's keeping up. He's a dragonfly, and he keeps constantly buzzing as he's flying around. Now with dragons, it's much more like a bird. Flap, 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 glide. Flap, 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 glide. So it made sense to have this buzzing for the wings of Sparks, and it makes sense for also to be a gliding effect for Spyro himself. Yeah, absolutely. Now, how do we give that motion again, Chocks? We didn't really talk about it in the pose section, but you can see that the feet aren't just all down. They have this kind of angle back, like we have the angle back of the feet here of Spyro, or Sparks as well, they kind of angle backwards to give the kind of more forward motion.
All 6 legs are pulled back.
That's right. And how about the actual paintwork on him and the eyes and the teeth and how that's working on that?
Yeah, definitely. You can see he's kind of a slight open mouth as well. So he has upper teeth and lower teeth. Glossy paintwork on those. And then the eyes, you can see the pupils, kind of again, it's more of a darker, deeper red, moving into kind of a pinkish colour for the eyes. The shape of the eyes is really nice as well. It's kind of circular, popping out as you expect.
Right.
Yeah. Well, Spyro's eyes still has a little bit of 3D effect that kind of curves outwards, but this for Sparks it's quite obvious. It's kind of a ball-shaped eye.
Yeah, you can see it from the side, can't you?
It's like popping out.
And you can see the sort of the edges of the mouth shape, right? So the way it comes out.
And then the body, the entire body, different shades of yellows and orange. Again, that goes throughout. Not as much texture compared to Spyro, because the majority of Sparks' body is going to be kind of a shell-like. So it's much more smoother, but you can still see the ridges between each line. It's very, how to put it? As you would expect, it's kind of like how crabs and like prawns are like, the way they connect to each other.
Right.
Yeah.
Sort of very separated.
Yeah. And then those toenails.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very. What's the colour? It's not green. It's more
like a turquoise kind of,
yeah.
maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, Chuck. So we really looked at some of the details that we can see. I mean, there was a lot of more details that we've not covered. Just the texture overall, the paint, the way the fingers are, they're all nicely separated, each one. You can see that they're not clumped together.
Yeah.
Nicely open up, and the fingernails themselves, they have a little bit more gloss on the fingernails as well. These are the sort of things that we were quite fortunate to really knowing what we were going to do based on the Spyro PVC. So we knew kind of what we was going to be doing for that. Now, let's talk a little bit about the base itself. Now, we talked a little bit about the reasoning why it's curving, but let's talk about the actual details themselves.
Yeah, so again, the waves, you can see how, as we were saying, so you can see the split between like this part here in the back, the split here, the split of the waves that goes outwards because of the movement and the kind of the power through of Spyro going through that. That's affecting the waves, and then the waves that gets open up, they get brushed aside. So the flow, the continuity of the waves that comes across to the sides, and then crashing into the actual crystals themselves. So once they crash into the crystals, the water kind of like bounces back off the crystal. So you can see that effect on this little crystal here on the edge, and a little bit more. Well, actually, that goes along the back through the inner side of the crystals. It's going to be quite hard to see. Camera.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can see it kind of goes through, and you can see it. You can almost see the purple underneath the blue.
Yeah.
So it's kind of deep inside. I'm not sure if that's going to pick up on the camera. Maybe
it's really quite hard, isn't it? But at least you can see the translucent of the crystal. See from the back there.
Definitely, and then I say you can, because there's kind of the blue translucent of the actual waves, which has this beautiful blue into white effect, which you can kind of think about for.
So, like for example, you have this on a shelf, and then let's say on the back of the shelf you have some lights, let's say some bright white lights, or some even purple or blue lights. That's going to really pick up from the front. You can see the light shining through the actual crystals as well as the waves themselves.
That's right.
Yeah. And then the swoosh effect is more of a kind of a
bit more opaque.
Yeah, a bit more of a matte color as well. It has, some whites and blues as they glide through the sky.
Yeah. Now, Chocks, let's talk about the elephant in the room. You know and I know this, but we actually remade these crystals. Now these crystals, we haven't really talked about this too much, right? The crystals themselves are, how do I say it? The actual base and the inspiration of the base, we don't really talk about that either, is he's flying through through the world, and he goes along the cliff, and he goes around, he flies around the cliff itself. And there are lots of different types of crystals there. There's blue ones, green ones, and purple ones like this. This is quite interesting, Chocks, because at the point that we developed this piece, remember we did this before the game came out, and we based it off of information we had at the time. Every single one of these was incredibly polygonal, and it was almost like perfect, it was like a rectangle, and boom, and like a rectangle, boom, 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 boom. And that's what we did. Every single one of these was all rectangular, Chocks. All of it was perfectly rectangular. And what you don't see, you see how does it look now, Chocks? You can see it has one edge here, one edge here, one edge here, and it's not one perfectly shaped line and perfectly 90-degree angles on it, right? It's much more, I'm sure it's picking up on it.
It's not like sharp crystals, like clear-cut crystals that you would expect back in the PlayStation days, right? It's all polygonal, triangle, and all that stuff. It's all sharp, and this one's kind of like because it's the remastered version. It's like it's been molded, right?
It's a bit more natural, I would say. Yeah. Whereas the other ones are like a jeweler's cut them, if that makes more sense, right? That kind of feeling, right? Except for Chocks, well, we made this originally. All the crystals were absolutely like it was back in the day of the PlayStation, where they're very, as we just said, jeweler cut and very, very sharp, hard edges, and it was like boom, boom, boom. We didn't realize until afterwards that was because we were looking at pre-alpha footage.
That was before they started adding all the...
So that's quite interesting, right? So we developed it, and we then produced it, and we made it, and then the actual game came out, or it was, we were painting, and we went, oh, wait a sec, something's gone wrong. So we looked at our original footage, and we looked at the subsequent footage after it came out, and we went, oh, whoopsies, and we completely went back and rechanged that all, and remade the crystal so it had a little bit more accurate to the actual game itself. So that was quite...
To the update of the game, yeah.
That was a really interesting thing that we were... It's almost like a blessing and a curse, right, Chocks, that we had the ability to see it much earlier. But of course, and the license always does say it's subject to change and it's not always the final version. And it was quite interesting to make sure that we updated it to this version. So the version that was there before, almost like the polygonal ones, that will remain in our vault, Chocks. And
that would have been a great addition for the original Spyro line.
Right. So almost like, so for example, if we were ever to make this in the OG style, because of course the Reignited version is this style. Can you imagine we remade the OG style in this? You would find that all of the, in fact, we could reuse the crystals, Chocks, to be honest with you, and they throw them away. So that was quite an interesting thing. It was almost like the first time. Yeah. It was the first time for us actually to have that.
And we changed that very quickly as well. As soon as we knew about it, we went, whoa.
There were certainly no ifs or buts, Chocks. We knew we had to change it, so it is what it is. So it was, it's definitely something we wanted to do. And of course, Chocks, the black riser at the bottom, it's really a nod towards the original OG Spyro. People will see them side by side when we do a comparison shot a little bit later on, but it made sense for us to consider that people may be one who might consider buying both, and as a result, we wanted them to sort of be a bit more matching, Chocks. All right, is there anything you want to add before we go on to the next question?
No.
All right, nice one.
Yeah. All right. Measurements. Is that right? Oh, no, sorry. My bad. Oh, next question from David Kurt.
Oh, yo.
Yeah, one more question before the measurements. Was there ever any thought in the design process regarding doing color variants of Spyro or even Sparks, who changes color depending on his health?
Great question. So there is always... Yeah, we just want to say that there might be possible variants afterwards. What you really want to do is just sort of consider how this might be doing first, and if people want to see color variants. I know it's something that we've been thinking about doing for our Spyro Reignited TF, our PVC line. And maybe what we might do is just test that out with some PVC ones and see how the response goes to that. and then maybe apply that to this as well. But let me hear from what you guys think. We would love to hear from you guys. Let us know in the comments below. Let us know in our Facebook group. We'd love to hear what you say.
Favorite cheat code color.
Exactly right, Charles. In terms of the measurement, Charles, let's do this then.
Okay. As always, a Coke can test. These are Hong Kong cans, so
it's 330.
Yep.
Then for American ones, that's 330 cans here, and this is just very, very slightly under 330 ml cans. So you can have a better idea of expecting what kind of shelf space you need, at least height-wise, based on this. So, it's pretty manageable. Typically when you have an animal-based one, it's usually not very tall because they're flat on the ground, and as you know, a human stands up straight. It's usually quite tall, not very deep. Whereas this one, of course, it's in the air, and therefore it's a little bit higher than expected, certainly compared to the original OG one.
I mean, just taking the measurements earlier on, this is a very nice rounded piece, as in it's very...
Good use of space.
That's right, yeah.
Spoiler alert, Sharks.
Well, we're talking about it. We might as well go for it, yes. So, height-wise, right, the tallest point of that, which will be the horn, to the bottom of the base, I have that around about 17.5 inches, so that's 45 centimeters. For the width, I'm basing that the way he's looking at the camera front on. I have that 16 inches across, so the width is like that, 16 inches across. That's 41 centimeters. And for the depth, based on the previous angle, just measure it back from the furthest, the front part of Spyro to the furthest part of the back, which is the largest crystal on the back. That is 15 inches in depth, so that's 38 centimeters. 17.5, 16, 15.
Square.
And it's almost a square shape, so yeah.
That's great, yeah. I think it's a lot of a good use of the space.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people are concerned about the sizes and all this sort of thing. I think this is a great sort of overall piece in terms of the size and the ratio between the figure itself compared to the base, etc., etc. I think it's pretty well done.
It's very even rounded.
Right.
So the weight of this, of course, guys, this is a prototype, so weights can change depending on the parts and the insides, etc., etc. For the statue here, it's 5.26 kg.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, as always, Chalks, this is the prototype, as you said. I always want to caveat this point, as we're not sure the final materials. Of course, the majority of it is going to be resin, but there may be some areas, once we get further down into the development line with the actual factory at the time, that we might be tweaking this here, tweaking that there. Maybe it might be in a different material, might be PVC, might be ABS, might be, or whatever it is. The answer is, we don't have that information now, and
take that as a rough estimate right now, 5.26. But it's not going to go into crazy numbers. It's not going to add another 5 kgs.
Yeah, that's right. But just wanted to say,
take,
material-wise, we just wanted to just be clear about that sort of stuff for now. That can change. Okay.
All right. Shout-outs. So that is your part. So what are shout-outs? Basically, from what I was saying in the Collectors Club, in that thread for the documentary. In there, I will randomly add a comment saying first 10 people to reply to that comment will get a shout out from you.
Alright, boom, let's do it. Alright, shout out to Derek Baker. Are you serious right now? You've got so many shout outs, I don't even know what's going on. You sort of like sneakily get him in there.
He slips me a
exactly, he says, let me know when you're about to... Shout out to Georgia Martin, though she's a huge fan of Spyro. Brenton Freely, he's a massive fan as well. What's going on, mate? Yvonne Horrocks, how you doing? Rafael Melgoza, how you doing? Rafael Conafal, how you doing? Shout out to Christos Chatzivzavas. How did that's a new one there, Trox? Yeah, nice one. Ronald Jacobs in the house. How you doing, mate? We got Martin Angel. How's it going? And last but not least, Mona Lisa. Monya, indeed. I'm sure that's not a real name. Alright, Chalks. So, as always, Chalks, this is
the standard edition.
Standard edition. What you see is what you get. It's fantastic looking piece. The beautiful sculpted waves, the crystals.
No real crystals.
Indeed.
But crystals.
Crystals, indeed.
Crystals, but no real crystals.
The Sparks and Spyro, of course, themselves. If you've been a observant person, and you've been keeping an eye as we've been spinning this bad boy, Chops, what would someone have noticed at the back over here?
Well, as always, there For this, there is a button, a circular button on the back, and also a kind of a USB port there. You see that USB?
Micro USB, absolutely.
That's right. And then there's a little LED indicator there, which indicates that there is power for this statue.
Now I wonder why that would be, because, well, that we also offer chocks in addition to the standard version, which you should be able to pick up from us, but also your local retailer.
Yeah, sure.
You know, if they don't offer it, tell them to get in contact with us so that they can help supply it for you. We also offer an exclusive version chocks, and that one is only available on our website. And the exclusive version is the same as the standard, except for one small difference, and that is boom! Check that out, guys. Oh, actually, was pretty strong. Actually, we went really bright studio lighting here, and that is quite significant in terms of being able to see that. Now, what do we see here, Chocks? Over to you.
Well, instant game changer there, right? On and off. Yep, they're spinning around. Yep, lights in the ocean.
And that is also bringing out the effect of the crystal itself.
Because they're all translucent, you can see how the lights are coming through the resin, the clear resin, and then you can see how it's affecting the surrounding crystals. So you see the light coming there?
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. And the light effect really has a nice bounce to the underside of the actual the piece itself. You can really sort of see it on the underbelly.
Yeah.
One thing though, Chocks, is you really like doing it on and off just to sort of see it, but what happens when you push the button one more time, Chocks? Right now we have it as the always on mode for the LEDs. Well, if we push it one more time, Chocks, check that out. So this again is the kind of parting of the waves. You can really see how it constantly kind of, it has the middle line over here and it spreads and opens them out like that. You see that? The way it spreads it, opening out like that. It gives you a nice sort of gentle wave opening up as it's opening, as he's skimming across the surface. And it really highlights the white of the tips. It kind of really comes out like that. You can really sort of see it. And again, if you ask me to turn them off and on again, it's a little bit more obvious now. Turn it off. And then boom.
Yeah.
See that? Yeah. And then one more time, Chocks.
The animated mode.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So guys, this is running on a 18650 battery. It's like kind of a long type-ish battery there. Those batteries are interchangeable and rechargeable as well. So even if you don't want to use a battery, you can always use the included USB cable as well to run the actual the electronics for this piece.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it really, I think it really complements the piece quite a lot because we have the use of this clear resin everywhere, and it allows for us to really better see some of the things.
So just having this on the shelf, and like I said previously, adding a few more lights around the shelf, it's going to bring out all the other the gems, and having the purples and the blue bouncing off a white background, for example, just makes this whole thing a bit more on another level.
Sure, that's right. Now, one of the things I wanted to sort of highlight is, and we always want to make sure that people have all the information that they need to know. If you have a look with the light, it does sort of highlight these areas here. I call it a necessary evil. Maybe that's too much of a terminology, but because this is translucent, Chocks, you can see the insert of these hefty pins that go into these pieces to hold up the characters themselves. Because it's resin, right? Yeah. So maybe we can sort of see it. I want to highlight it there. You can see it there. You can see it quite obviously from there at this angle. Yeah. That's right, and that's for sparks. And if we flip it to the other side over here,
you don't need to flip it. You can see one right here. You can see one.
Oh yeah, Spyro's one's there. There.
That one.
And just so you can see
those two areas.
Just so you can see it over here as well. Yeah. It's a little bit deeper because right now this is a bit farther. It's a little bit deeper.
You can see it now. Yeah. Turn it back there. There, you can see it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So quite interesting actually, if you turn it off, it's not as, of course it's still there, it's translucent, right? But when you turn it on, oh sorry, it wasn't even on. So, where the hell's it gone?
You had it.
We're just looking at this one over here, right? You
What
can
are you looking at?
I'm looking at this one in particular here.
Okay.
Maybe if I just turn it over here, just so we can see it. There. Okay. Turn it on. Stop there. Maybe you can slightly see it more. When it comes to this sort of thing, the engineering is really important. That the size of the peg, etc., and the depth that it goes into the pieces is in a way that doesn't lead to any issues later on down the road. So it's going to have an effect on the aesthetics. So you can see it, as I said. We wanted to point it out to you guys here because it's important that you have all the information when it comes to buying this piece. If there is anything that we can do to improve it, we'll look into it later on. But just wanted to show you guys that it is. And what's interesting, Chocks, is Spyro himself is quite a heavy beast, and as a result, we have two connection points. Chocks, did you notice that?
Yeah.
One is in this piece over here. So there's two parts in this one. One is at the top, which is sparks, and one is at the bottom, which is one of the pegs.
Yeah.
And the other one is over here, Chocks. So there's two. One, two that connects and anchors Spyro to the piece itself. So, I'm turning it around. It seems pretty sturdy to me, Chops. We're going to keep, of course, doing our internal tests, transit tests, aging tests, all that sort of stuff, because we know this is incredibly, ambitious with the engineering on this, and it's definitely something that we've taken into account at the expense of some of the aesthetics with this over here. But it is what it is, Chops.
Yeah, it has to have some connecting point to hold this piece and make it look like it's gliding.
Exactly right. All right, Choc. So measurements. Well, I think this is going to be an easy one, Chocs.
It's exactly the same as the standard for measurements.
Absolutely.
Okay, so again, I just want to highlight. So the height is 17.5, which is 45 centimeters. The width is 16 inches, so that's 41 centimeters, and the depth is 15 inches and 38 centimeters.
Bada bing, bada boom.
Yeah. So the weight could be slightly different because obviously one has electronics and the other doesn't. So there will be some slight changes when it comes to the actual weight.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, Chocs. Let's keep on going.
Okay. Next question. Luke Matthew. Will there ever be a life-size Spyro?
Interesting. Well, Chocs, I can say we've already teased a life-size Spyro bust that's going to be in. It's going to be in our development pipeline. In fact, it's already at the physical stage just recently. And we're doing both a life-size version and a grand-scale bust. So a life-size bust and a grand-scale bust. And we look forward to showing you guys that as it develops. And it's an exciting piece. I mean, it looks fantastic. And I think it will just be a great compliment to anybody's Spyro collection. So more on that. Stay tuned, guys.
Cool. All right. Last but not least, John Agnew. Could you do a picture with all the different Spyros next to each other? Would love to see all them purple boys.
Ask and ye shall receive, and you'll see that in 3, 2, 1. Boom! Check it out, guys! You can now really have a better idea of seeing how Spyro Reignited Resin compares to Spyro OG. And of course, Spyro Reignited PVC TF,
right.
And of course over there on your side, Chocs.
Oh, OG Spyro Crystal
Dragon, exactly. So you have a better idea of how they might look in a collection. Now, you'll immediately see that the Reignited Resin is quite a bit bigger if you just sort of compare the size of it. If you just give us a bit of a turn, Chocs.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, one of the things is, of course, is that, the head is pretty similar in terms of, in fact, his head is slightly bigger compared to this head, but the sleekness of the body is much more sleek with the this version of the Reignited version. So overall, it's definitely a bigger footprint, and of course, when you add Sparks along there, in fact, a lot of people were actually saying, why wasn't Sparks with this piece itself? And the reason, of course, for that was it's not on the front cover. Now, we didn't have that issue with this Reignited version, so therefore we had the ability to include him, and because we weren't trying to copy a cover or what have you. So, yeah, definitely this is quite a bit bigger than this one over here, and when you then added all the environmental base as well to it, it's something that we knew that we had to make sure was robust enough to support such an ambitious pose, Chocs. So yeah, I mean, that's what we're at. And in terms of the colouring with the OG Spyro, of course, the TF. I know a lot of people actually have the Spyro TF in their collection as well. You have a better idea of how they might look together, and well, it's, how do I say, quite the bigger brother, I would say. Alright, Chucks, I think that's pretty much it. Is there anything you want to add before we wrap this one up?
No, it's just a really nice evolution from the classic Spyro world here, moving on to the reignited versions over there. So.
It's such an honor to be able to work on this, Chucks, and we look forward to doing more and more in the Spyro range. Alright, Chucks, we're done for this one. Alright, guys, thanks for watching. I'm your host, Alex.
I'm Chuckles.
F4F is love.
F4F is life.
And we'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Laters.